So we know our A is 1/2. So we can go ahead and plug that in. So there's the equation for number 3. Remember that squared is part of that form. Questions there? So and I also wanted to look at number 10. We only got to do one of these in class yesterday, but both of these were very similar. We're using standard form, which is that ax squared plus bx plus c. Ava R., what's the first step you took?
You plug in the first point for x and y.
Yes, awesome. So our y is 0. A1 squared plus b times 1 plus c. So we end up getting a plus b plus c for that first point. And we know we have to do it for all of them. When you plug in that last point, you end up seeing that c is equal to 2. So now we are going to take those other 2 equations that we made from the points and plug 2 in for c there. So now we have 0 equaling a plus b plus 2. And I want to keep my constants on one end of the equation. So we have -2 equaling a plus b. And we're going to do the same thing for the other one. And we want to bring our constants together. So I'll subtract that 2 over. Questions how we got here so far? Cool, so now we have these 2 equations. I'm going to rewrite them one more time, just to have them lined up. Helene, what did you do from here? What can we do?
I multiplied the first equation in red by -2.
Yeah, we can use elimination here to now solve for a and b. So when we do that, we end up getting 4 equaling -2a minus 2b. And then we will add it to our other equation. And again, you don't have to rewrite it however many times I am. I want to just be specific so that you can see exactly what we're doing here. When we do that, our b cancels, adds to 0. We are left with 2a equaling 6. We'll divide by 2 on both sides and end up getting a equaling 3. And now we just have one more letter left to solve for. I will use this equation right here, that first one, with -2 equaling a plus b, which we know a is 3. So b is -5. So now we can take that a, b, and c and plug them in for that standard form that we first talked about. So y equals 3x squared minus 5x plus 2. And there's the quadratic function that goes through those 3 points. And remember, we can check. We can plug that into our calculator and look at the table. You want to go ahead and check. Questions on this one? All right. So we are going to move right along. If you head over to Google Classroom, an opener should have already posted for you. It posted 7 minutes ago. There's 2 different ones on the same page. It says what I need to know about parabolas. So go ahead and pull that into the app that you're using. You can also just get a blank sheet of paper. That's fine as well. All right. Jordan, what are the 4 things that we would find for a parabola to graph it? What are those 4 things we always found?
The axis of symmetry,
Yeah.
the vertex, and the x and y intercepts.
Yeah. Awesome. So we have this function here, f of x equals 5x squared minus 2x minus 7. We know this is in standard form, and we know those are the 4 things we're going to need to find to graph it. This is sort of a review. We know how to do this. We haven't maybe done it for a day or 2. We wrote equations yesterday. I'll give you a few minutes. Go ahead, find these characteristics for this parabola, and then go ahead and graph, and then we'll go over it together. It's okay if you're not done yet. Lacey, do you want to start us off by telling us how you found the axis of symmetry?
I did x is equal to 2 over 2 times 5.
Awesome, because we know that x, for standard form, that axis of symmetry is negative b over 2a. Lacey saw that that 2 is already negative, so when we have double negatives, they'll turn to positive. Oh, not a there. So then what did this simplify to, Lacey?
It simplified to 1/5.
Awesome. Good. Riley, how are we going to find the vertex?
I plugged in 1/5 for x. So I did y equals 5 times 1/5 squared minus 2 times 1/5 squared minus 7.
Awesome.
Oh, wait, no, 2 doesn't get squared.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. Awesome. All right. And when you did that, Riley, what did you get?
I got negative 6.4.
Yeah. So as a fraction, that is 36 over 5, and you said it's 6.4?
Yeah.
Awesome. So our vertex is 1/5 and negative 36/5. But having that decimal is important to help us graph. Good. Next, we will skip to our y-intercept. Malachi, how did you find the y-intercept?
I plugged in 0 for x.
Awesome. Plugging in 0 for x. And what did you end up getting?
-7.
Yeah. And how do
Yeah.
you write this answer?
0, 7.
Yeah. Make sure we're writing our intercepts as ordered pairs. It's very easy to forget that. We need to write it as an ordered pair. Good. And lastly, we have our x-intercept. All right, Jaden, how are we going to find our x-intercept here?
Okay, so you need to make y equals 0 and then rewrite the rest of the equation.
Awesome.
And then that's as far as I got. But then you would look to see if you can factor that out. And I think you can, because if you multiply 5 and 7 together, it would be -35. Wait, maybe not.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, okay. And then it would be, let me think. It would be -7 and +5.
Yeah, good. Always check to see if you can factor it. It's way easier. We don't have to use the quadratic formula. Let's not. If we can go ahead and factor that. All right.
Yeah.
So
And
now,
then you would,
go ahead.
oh, sorry. Did you want me to still guess? Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. All right, so you have 5x squared, and then you do plus 5x, and then minus 7x minus 7.
Beautiful. Keep going.
Okay, and then you will have, okay, so then you can do 0 equals, then you can pull out a 5x out of the first side, and then you'll be left with x plus 1. And then you can pull a -7 out of the second one, and you'll be left with x plus 1. So then you have 5x minus 7 and x plus 1 both equaling 0.
Awesome. Great job, Jaden. This step, rewriting it like that. Once you do the grouping, this is part of grouping. We need to rewrite this last step. Keeping it in the form before that, you're just saying that there's two different parts that doesn't exactly equal this. You need to rewrite it for the grouping part.
Yeah, and that's part of the zero product property, which we will continue to use in chapters 5, 6, 7, 8. You'll use next year in honors trig and pre-calc. So if you are missing that step, you are doing it incorrectly, and you will lose points on solving this equation. So make sure you're not jumping from one step to the next. In algebra, each step needs to be equivalent to the one before it.
Yes. Okay, so then when we set each binomial equal to 0, we'll get x is equal to 7/5 and x is equal to -1. And lastly, Grace, how are we going to write these x-intercepts?
We're gonna write them as points. So it would be 7/5, comma 0 and -1, 0.
Awesome. Good job. We want to make sure we're writing those intercepts as ordered pairs. If you have not graphed already, go ahead. You could scale your graph with different points if you would like. Make every point 1/5 if you wanted to do that. But I'm gonna keep them all 1. So it looks like for our vertex, this is not 6.4, it's 7.2, negative 7.2. So Riley, you may have a little mistake with plugging those in. I can go through it if we are confused on that. Who wants to see this multiplied out? Give me a thumbs up. Let me do this down here. When we square that 1/5, the squared goes to both that 1 and the 5. When we multiply that by 5, it would be 1/5. 5/25 is the same as 1/5. Minus 2/5 minus 7. Try and plug that in your calculator and then see if you get it. That y-intercept is very close to that vertex there. And then we can draw our parabola. Questions here? Okay, so now underneath of this is a chart. We're still confused on that. You could stay after class. I could help you real quick. So it's a chart. What I need to know about parabolas. Those 3 different forms are the ways we talked about. Graphing, that just means vertex. Vertex form. Standard form, we just talked about standard form. That's that y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Everything is multiplied out. We don't have any parentheses. Vertex form. We also just talked about that. You did that on the homework last night. That's that y equals a x minus h squared plus k. Last, we have our intercept form. Alyssa, do you remember what the intercept form is?
Would it be y equals a times x minus p times x minus q?
Awesome. Now we're going to think of that axis of symmetry, that line of symmetry, the axis. We always labeled it AOS. For standard form, how do we find our axis of symmetry? Faith, what's that formula for standard form when we're finding that axis of symmetry?
Negative b divided by a times 2.
Yeah. Now let's just make sure it's x equals. When we write our axis of symmetry, it's going to be x equals a number. Great. Now when we think for vertex form, that axis of symmetry. Ava R., what's our axis of symmetry for vertex form?
It's H, K.
Yeah. So you're even getting, that's our vertex, but yeah.
Oh.
I knew exactly what you meant. Our x is there is H. You're good. Yeah, so that vertex, in vertex form, it's that H, K. Good. And now lastly, our line of symmetry for intercept form. Think about how we got that for intercept form when we see our intercepts. Malachi.
P plus Q over 2.
Awesome. Heading on down a vertex. How are we going to find our vertex in standard form? What else do we have to do? Ella. Once we get that axis of symmetry, what do?
You have to plug the x into the equation.
Yeah. So plug that axis of symmetry value into equation 4x. To get that y coordinate. What about intercept form? We can see right from vertex form, gives us that vertex, super easy. What about intercept form? Gabby Snyder, what do you think? Vertex for our intercept form. Once we get that axis of symmetry, what can we do?
You plug it into the equation.
Yeah, same thing. We'll plug that axis of symmetry into equation for x. So you get that y coordinate. And remember those vertexes you have to write as an ordered pair. Now y-intercept. Going in the same order for standard form. What is our y-intercept going to be? Grace, what is our y-intercept going to be for standard form?
Don't we just make the y equal to, I meant the x equal to 0?
Yeah, so our x is going to be 0 when we're finding that y-intercept. But if we look, something special about y-intercept for standard form, if we plugged in 0 for those x's, what are we left with?
Oh, y equals c.
Yeah. So we can automatically see, and you can always double check that work, that y-intercept is going to be 0c. Because we're plugging in 0 for x, and we're going to be left with c because those x's all go turn to 0. So for vertex form, y-intercept, we know we're plugging in that x equal to 0. So you'd have y equaling a, plugging in 0 for that x. When we do that, how Will we always solve using vertex form when we're finding that y-intercept? What's the way we should solve? When there's numbers in there for those letters, what method should we solve? Solve what? Valeria, what do you think?
Square roots.
Yes. We're going to solve using square roots. That binomial squared. We'd subtract that k over, divide by a, and we'd be left with that binomial squared. We can take square roots of both sides. Don't foil that out there. Keep it together. Now, intercept form. We're doing the same thing. We're obviously always plugging in x for 0. So we would have y equaling a. With plugging in that 0 for those both x's, you'd end up with a times negative p times negative q. But this is the important part. We're plugging in 0 for those x's. X-intercepts. In general, how do we solve for x-intercepts? Brooke. Solving for x-intercepts.
Make y 0.
Yeah. Y will be 0. When we do that for standard form, we get 0 equaling ax squared plus bx plus c. Jaden, what are the steps we should take once we set y equal to 0 for standard form? What steps should we take from here?
You should see if you can factor it out, and if you can't, then you want to do the quadratic formula.
Perfect. So see if we can factor. First. If not, quadratic formula. Which is that beautiful x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You don't need to write this down if you know it, but it's nice to have a refresher. X-intercepts for vertex form. We know we're setting y equal to 0. Now, of course, I got ahead of myself here. This is where you're using those square roots. When you're solving up here, that's just going to end up giving you a value. It's y equals. Miss Carp's getting ahead of herself this morning. Let's erase it from there and write it down below. Up here, you would just solve. This will just give you a value. Sorry for the confusion there. And lastly, for x-intercepts for intercept form. What will they be? Intercept form. X-intercepts. Madison, what are our x-intercepts going to be for intercept form?
Aren't the x-intercepts just the p and the q? So p comma 0 and then q comma 0.
Yeah, awesome. Perfect. So hopefully this kind of helps bring everything together. It's kind of your cheat sheet for what you need to know about parabolas, the different forms, how you can find those characteristics, sums it all together. Questions on these? Okay, so we still have about 5 minutes left in class. Your homework is that page on the book. If you have questions from last night's homework, questions in general, any type of questions, please hang around and ask. We will be here for another 5 minutes. But if not, I will see you tomorrow for my very last day with you.